Welcome everybody who's on to the Fireside Chat. Today we are going to be talking about developing a digital fitness program for finance and accounting. It's going to be really awesome, so thank you for joining. And before we get started, I just want to tell you about any questions that you may have during the call. If you have any questions, scroll your mouse over the bottom of the window. You should see a chat box. Go ahead and send them through the chat. And at the end of the call, we will open it up for Q&A with the speakers. And you'll be able to ask any questions, or if you sent any in through the chat, then we'll make sure they get answered. And you see on the right-hand side of your screen, Marilyn Kibler-Cologne. She is going to be facilitating today. She is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Gateway Architects. And she's going to be introducing our featured speakers, Ginger and Mozam. So without further ado, Marilyn, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. And good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everybody who's joined our webinar. Gateway Architects is just so delighted to be hosting this webinar and the virtual fireside chat on developing a digital fitness program for finance and accounting organizations. And Ashley said, I'm Marilyn Kibler-Cologne, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Gateway Architects. And we provide Meister Smart Business apps, which are innovative software solutions that help companies become more agile and flexible using SAP. These applications are tightly integrated into core SAP to provide fast access to your data from anywhere within SAP, from one screen, from any device, within seconds at any time. And these applications power and automate financial reporting, sales order management, e-commerce, supply chain, and procurement processes to help companies digitally modernize their business, increase operational efficiency, and lower the total cost of ownership on the existing investments made in SAP. And our discussion today is with two distinguished thought leaders and experts. And these experts have broad backgrounds working across multiple industries, deep expertise working with finance and accounting organizations and their processes, and significant experience working in SAP environments. And I'm delighted to introduce Mozam Shah. Speaking from Melbourne, Australia today is Mozam Shah. He has a prolific career that includes 20 years of global experience working with companies in the Middle East, North America, and Europe. He served in leadership roles such as CFO, business conglomerate, specializing in manufacturing, contracting, and trading of industrial products, called Al Zamil for Industry, Trade, and Transport. In addition, he served as CFO for the Gulf Union Foods Company, a company specializing in the production and marketing of juices and beverages in Saudi Arabia. He's also held various leadership positions at Deloitte, KPMG, and PwC. He's helped companies develop and implement financial reporting frameworks, including working with BI tools to set KPIs for corporate performance and other metrics. And he's championed the change management process to help companies move to a controls-driven work environment. Today, Mozam is the managing director of Fiber Consulting, where he provides executive-level advisory services, digital transformation, business process, outsourcing, and executive training. So welcome, Mozam.
Hi, Marilyn, and everyone else. Thanks a lot for inviting me over, and a great intro.
Well, we're delighted to have you. And I'm especially delighted to introduce Ginger Luttrell. Ginger is the founder and CEO of the SunSource Super User Network. She's also written a book called The Super User Revolution that describes how super user groups need to be part of a company's DNA. SunSource Super User Network for SAP provides a community where super users can plug in, network, learn, influence, and grow. SunSource is the official and only community for enterprise super users. Ginger's developed an award-winning model that's used to develop and track high-value, sustainable super user programs and communities post-SAP implementation. She created the super model 10 years ago after seeing that the existing method of building super user programs lacked structure to support post-project sustainment. After repeated implementations, this model has withstood the test of time, proven its value, and has won prestigious President's Awards. And as Ginger passionately says, ask anyone, I'm the world's guru of super user networks. And welcome, Ginger.
Thank you, Marilyn. That's awesome. Super awesome. I really appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to this. Always fun with Mozam, and really glad to be here today.
It's always a great pleasure to be a co-speaker with Ginger, as always.
All right. Very good, you guys. Well, we're so delighted to have you here. So just to set some context about our webinar, we are here to talk about how finance and accounting organizations can become more digitally fit. And in today's unpredictable world, successful finance and accounting organizations must be agile and ready to make smart, intelligent, data-driven decisions using oceans of data. And there's new technology that provides extreme automation in core finance and accounting processes and is expected to create a never-before-seen level of maturity in finance operations. We all know there'll be an increase in the number of humans who will work with intelligent automation to provide strategic insights for operations, supply chain, sales, and marketing, and other functions. So in a truly intelligent enterprise, finance leaders must extend digital transformation across the enterprise from the back office operations through the customer experience. So how can extreme automation lessen the daily drudgery of data management tasks, thus increasing productivity? And how can finance and accounting professionals become super users of technology and become agents of change and transformation for the organization? And thirdly, what are the impacts to all of this? What's the impact to the organization, to the worker, to the employee, and most importantly, to our bottom line as well? So there's a lot to unpack here. So to get this discussion going, I'd like to start with the following question to Mozam. So we'll start with an easy question around digital transformation and technological disruption. So Mozam, from your perspective, how is digital transformation changing companies in general? And then specifically, how do you see digital transformation changing the finance organizations and even the finance profession specifically?
Thank you, Marilyn. First of all, we're going to be talking a lot about the disruption, not only in the economic models, but also how they are impacting the businesses and the structures and the design of finance function as well. Disruption, this is not the first time that we are seeing disruption. It has been going on since beginning. In the first industrial revolution, that was a disruption. The second industrial revolution, all the way until now. It has been happening at different levels. So first of all, we got to understand that disruption in business models and organizational structure, design structure, it does not occur in a vacuum. It actually plays out across the complex landscape of not only the economies, but also societies, and most importantly, around the customer needs. Yeah. So I quite often I use this word that we are living in a VUCA world, which is VUCA. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So in a VUCA, trends that are reshaping the global economy, some of them are the rising income levels and the living standards all around the world, especially in the developing part, including India and China. Then you've got better access to financial services globally, particularly in the development of digital finances provided by the mobile phones. And then you've got aging populations in some countries, which is on the rise. At the same time, we are also living in a world of institutional deficiencies, with international governance bodies struggling to regulate the business practices and to enable sustainable growth, and look at all the corporate scandals that has happened in recent past, which clearly are an example of these failures. And to add to all of this complex picture, we are witnessing climate change. Where we are seeing a rapid degradation of natural resources and increasingly polluted water bodies all over in the planet. Now, Keeping all of these complex socio-economic shifts in view, we have continuing development in technology. Data has now replaced the most precious resource on this planet, which used to be oil. And this mass generation of data is creating space for new business models to enhance the quality of life and most especially the customer experience. One of the biggest impacts that these developing technologies have on businesses is that they have empowered the customer through internet, app, app technologies, digitization, and social media. As a result of this increased empowerment of in and new products lead times, the life cycles of not only the product development but also businesses have become shorter and shorter. And the increased power of consumer has led companies to find new ways of doing businesses to satisfy the customer needs. I mean, look at Uber, which has completely disrupted the traditional way of doing taxi or the public transportation business. And it is not the Uber that has killed the conventional public transportation business, but it is actually the customer need which has been exploited. It is the limited access to the taxis and and very high fares which Uber has actually exploited to become successful. I mean, likewise, Netflix has completely chased blockbuster business out of the door, and it's because of the ridiculous amount of amount of the late fee that the predecessor of Netflix used to charge. Likewise, you've got Amazon, which has disrupted the retail business model. You got Airbnb, which has disrupted the traditional hospitality model. So now, if we look at in this landscape of changes and disruptions, if we look at the fundamentals of finance professionals historically, finance professionals were seen as financial advisors of any business, meaning people uh, who are pivoted around making sure that they are taking care of the integrity of financial information. But now their role has changed from being just financial advisor to a trusted business advisor. Yeah, and the delta between just being a financial advisor and the trusted business advisor is the creation of strategic value. And that strategic value actually comes from a very deep insight of the value chain of the business. So, what are the drivers of value? And this is something that has become the bread and butter of finance professionals in the digital age. Finance is, as a result of it, the finance is now embedding itself across the business. Today, as a finance professional, you cannot succeed unless you collaborate closely with everyone in the company, with all the business unit leaders, including the CIO to manage the data, with the head of human resources to shape up the culture, with the business unit managers to invest in the right places to create value, and with the chief operating officer to gain the most value, from operational investments, and with all of these people to design and build cross-functional capabilities. So I think collaboration is the key here in order to get the level of business insight that is required to create value, and that has changed the fundamentals of finance.
Yeah, and I'll jump in on that, Mozam, because I've got the twist of super users and those people that are actually in the business using these technologies to fulfill business processes on a day-to-day basis. And I love how you connected it to everything outside of the ERP and in the space that we live in and the space that we're talking about. Because if I think about things like you mentioned, the pollution in the oceans, if we bring out all these great technologies to go and correct this problem, it's money ill spent if we don't correct the behaviors that cause the problem in the first place. And fundamentally, that's what we're talking about, is not just applying technology. So from my standpoint, I'd like to address why we're just now seeing so much of this term disruption. I mean, disruption has been a term that's been used, but right now it is front and center and in our face on a day-to-day basis. And we've seen so many new products and technologies storming the castle, so to speak, for quite some time. So this is nothing new that we've got these new technologies. I mean, this has been coming for a long time, like you said. So why are we now using this term? And I think from my standpoint, it has more to do with this convergence of the human thinking brain and the evolution of the computer thinking brain. And the notion that maybe a computer might beat me out of a job interview, or even worse, I'm in a job and my computer beats me out of that job and I get laid off because there's a computer that's there with a new thinking brain and a new AI, artificial intelligent brain thinking on my behalf. And I think that can scare people. And I think that when you think about the word disruption, that word can be a really scary word that causes fear, worry and fear in a workforce. And so if you take that term and bring it down to everyday life at my desk, if people are talking about constant disruption, like you're coming in and disrupting, I think that can be a little bit hand shackling for a workforce. So it's troublesome for me when I keep hearing that word. I almost cringe every time I see that word, because I think about my super users and my end users out there saying, please don't disrupt my job. I would rather my job be something that's not disrupted. And so I think that if in terms of differentiation of companies out there getting their arms around this, the differentiation for winners in the market, I think, are going to be those who can innovatively shift the workforce, the organizational structures in which people have historically worked, and not just put a Band-Aid on it. If you're going to use the word disruption, you really have to use a follow-on word to that disruption. It's sort of like if you say that I'm burning the field to refresh and rebuild the soil. We can't just end the sentence with burning the field. You have to have some reason why you're burning the field. And so when I hear disruption, I'm like, yeah, disruption for what? And then are you also engaging your workforce? So if I think about the space I'm in with super users and end users, how do I engage super users in that conversation with the disruption and what that means, and then pulling the word transformation into that, and how do we shift the organizational structures? Again, just like the analogy of the technologies to clean up the ocean, if we don't rework the behaviors that are causing the problem, then it's money ill spent. And I think we've got the same thing here. We've got these cool technologies. And surely the IT technologists are super excited about all this really, really cool stuff. But if you go and talk to end users and super users on a day-to-day basis, they might not be so hyper excited about those things if they haven't been engaged in that and brought into a new way of working and understanding what that new way of working is like. So I'm hoping that these leaders that are more strategic minded leaders and future thinking leaders will start looking at the organizational structure shift that needs to happen to support us being able to exploit those new technologies that are coming out. All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So let me ask you a quick
Being
question here.
transformation now rather than disruption.
That's right. Total 360 transformation.
So then adding to that, Ginger and Mozam, I captured a few things about new technology storming the castle, as Ginger says, and the convergence of a human thinking brain versus a computer thinking brain brings a lot of imagery to mind. So thinking of those things against the backdrop that has been in the landscape that has been presented, talk about some of these cognitive tools that are starting to hit the market, the AI, predictive analytics kinds of tools with machine learning capabilities. Can you talk and share your thoughts around those kinds of tools, as well as how are they shaping or reshaping and impacting the finance and accounting group and organizations specifically?
Marilyn, I think machines have been around since centuries. Yeah, like during Second Industrial Revolution in 18th and 19th century, it was fine for most of us when smart machines began to replace the blue-collar jobs in factories and assembly lines, and they have been steadily working their way up in the corporate food chain. And if I always say that if machines were people, they would be on a fast track program in your company and would have gotten promoted before you, because they work harder, they learn faster, they cost less, they don't go off on maternity or paternity leave, and they're full of timeless untapped potential, and and that's the problem, because their rapid career trajectory is starting to make a few people uneasy, particularly in finance. Now, what we have seen recently is that there's been exponential growth in data. Not only that, but also a growth in storage capacity of that data, and the processing power is, and all of these things combined together, they're fueling the fourth industrial revolution. And all the smart machines that we have been seeing around us, they are built on cognitive technologies, which quite simply means that they can do almost everything that humans can do. For example, they can listen, they can read, they can interpret, they can speak and analyze. And the smart ones, they can also learn. And now, what are some of these cognitive technologies which are at work, particularly in finance? I have seen machine learning, robotic process automation, natural language generation, and speech recognition tools as some of the means and the mediums which are helping and shaping up not only the finance profession, but it's also bringing in a lot of efficiencies in what we do as a finance function. Now, it is very important and critical to remember that none of these technologies that I've just mentioned, they stand on its own. They are built on top of each other. Like, for example, you cannot have predictive analysis or predictive analytics in the company to do your forecast or to do your futuristic analysis without having machine learning in place. Yeah, you cannot have blockchain with a lot of these technologies building on top of each other and supplementing each other. So the question is that how are these cognitive technology is being used in businesses, and what are the areas of application of these cognitive technologies? I actually categorize the application of these technologies into three. The first one is where they are impacting the products and services that businesses are offering to the consumers. Like, for example, app development of the new platform to create a completely new product or a completely new service, like, for example, Netflix and Uber and Amazon. The second category is whereby these technologies are improving the efficiencies within the business, like, where you process automation in order to bring in more and more efficiencies and increase internal controls. And the third one, where we are seeing application of these cognitive technologies, is where we get an insight, business insight, using these technologies. We learn from information, and that learning actually helps us in business decision making. And machine learning is a classic example which gives us that insight. So these cognitive technologies in the world of business is shaping up new products. It's automating the internal processes, and it's also helping us in getting insights to make better and informed business decisions. Now, as far as uh, apart from the business application, as far as application of these some of these technologies in finance function is concerned, you have multiple functions that are actually getting a benefit from these technologies. For example, FP&A. Historically, what we would do in FP&A, like for example, I used to work as of a company, and I had and the FP&A manager would have his own team. Now, that person was responsible to create some sort of historic analysis for products, for services, and for different geographical business performances within the organization. So what the FP&A manager would do is he or she would just pull up the data from the ERP system and then cobble it all together in order to make that historical analysis. Now, with the advent of these cognitive technologies, his or her job is going to change in future. I mean, I am not going to pick up the phone and call my FP&A manager to do a historical analysis of the data. I would actually just use a chatbot to get all of that historical analysis, which is required for different business segments and different products. Now, the big question is FP&A manager going to lose his or her job as a result of this change or as a result of this transformation? And the answer is not really. He's going to lose his job, because these technologies of analyzing the historical data, a person who would reach out to the business unit managers, sit down with them, and give them the required insights, the business insights. The business insights would be all compiled together by the smart machines, by the cognitive technologies, whereas this person will use all of these insights and relay it to the non-finance people in a layman, in a business language. So his or her role is going to be displaced, is going to be changed from what it used to be historically. Likewise, you have accounts receivable and accounts payable where businesses could use RPA, the robotic process automation, in order to match the purchase order with the supplier invoice and the GRNs. So that again, that the supplier verification, invoice verification is not going to be a manual process. It's going to be completely automated. And the big question is that the person who used to do it historically, is he or she going to lose their job? And the answer is no. They'll be spending more time on value creating activities. Like, for example, they would focus more on where the company is spending, overspending, and how to control the cost, how to manage the credit terms with some of the key suppliers, rather than just matching the documents. So their job is going to completely change, and it will go through a transformation. Likewise, you have got the NLG, which is natural language generation. My job as CFO, part of my job as CFO historically was to, based on the business, the operational and the financial information of the company at the month end, I would actually make an executive summary for the board and for the XCOM, for them to be able to see what has happened in the business. Now, with NLG, the report writing or the preparing the executive summary is not going to be my job. I mean, the smart machine is going to do it, but my job will be to relay that information in a more effective way to the business unit managers, and to have that insight and to facilitate them in the decision making process. So I think the important thing is that as far as the people in finance function is concerned, they need to increase their digital quotient. I mean, we had intelligence, intelligence quotient in the past, emotional quotient came up recently, and now we are seeing that to be able to survive in the financial world, people should have that digital quotient as an important and necessary skill set in their bucket list.
Well, and I think that certainly finance is a big piece of this, and in the world you've lived in is a big finance space, but we can definitely apply this to all areas of the business. Interesting, as you were talking, it was reminding me, because as you're talking about these technologies that are coming in, and are they going to displace workers, and do people have to be worried about their jobs because here are these computer thinking brains coming in, and can they think like me? I mean, can they really think like me? I mean, that's a little scary proposition. And so it made me think about this book that I listened to on Audible. I do a lot of book consumption on Audible, and I would recommend that for people. The book is called 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And if anyone on the call wants that information, I'm happy to send that. Just shoot me a post after this is over. But it made me think about that, because there's a section in that book where he talks about the autonomous cars. And as he's going through the scenario talking about these cars, he's going through a conversation around algorithms, because essentially when you're talking about robots and when you're talking about software, you're talking about algorithms. You're talking about a program, if then else. I mean, I come from a programming background. I get this. But what he's talking about is these algorithms that lack the consciousness, and so that ability to make these decisions based on feelings or gut feelings. And he's not proposing that can't ultimately be something that's folded in, but all the data is not there. So when he talks about these cars, he says when you have an autonomous car, you might have a driver, and the driver is in the back seat and he's asleep, and the car comes up and two kids run out in the road, and the car has to make the decision. Am I going to swerve in order to miss these children and not kill them? And I'm going to swerve in the left-hand lane and to the left, and that puts me head on to another vehicle. And so if I make that decision, it's likely going to kill my driver that owns this car. And so here in this case story, he's talking about, then you could have the very real possibility that a car manufacturer comes out with these, and there's a model that is one that's more altruistic. So you can decide, am I going to take the altruistic version that says, save the children? Yes, save the children. And if it kills the driver, well, we save the children, or we save the family that we were going to run over. And in the ego-driven model, it is save the owner of the vehicle at all costs. And he's talking about this as consumers, we might have to make these types of algorithmic decisions, especially in the early days of AI, as more and more data is getting accumulated for the computer thinking brain to be able to get closer to the human thinking brain. So I brought that up because when you were talking about it, I was thinking in my mind, wow, this is a compelling discussion that people have to think about. And as we move through time, we have to think about this more and more and more. But I'm going to turn this around. You're talking about this technology that's going to come in, it's going to come on a business, and I'm going to turn it around and say, how will professions and organizations properly shift to apply an innovative transformation in the way they work in order to exploit those capabilities that are being ushered in by all these new tools and technologies. Now, first, I'm going to say that the fight against fear is education. So I'm going to say that again, because I think it's really important, and in the super user space that I live in, really important, because historically speaking, we've been left a little bit in the dark. We've had technologies thrown over the wall from the information technology space at us, and we just have to deal with it, or we just have to figure it out. And so now, as we're moving towards these computer thinking brains, it is imperative that we get the workforce in a position where we're fighting fear with education and understanding about what this is all about, and what role do I have, and what role not just do I have, but is an imperative for me to take in shifting how we as an organization move to taking in and then exploiting, in a good sense of the word, exploiting all of the capabilities of these technologies for that ultimate best customer experience. I mean, that's what we're all going after. And so I think that if you look at the fact that there's been an ongoing negative narrative, if you will, about the attainment of ROI, because everyone wants to get return on their investment. And are you hearing me okay? I just wanted to take a checkpoint. Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to take a checkpoint because I got a note that made me think you weren't hearing me okay. But anyway, there's been an ongoing narrative from the business side on a negative narrative on the attainment of ROI. And I'm not just talking and referring to how people feel, but I'm talking about proven ROI with data that's trustworthy and defendable data. Last year, I can't tell you how many people I pulled in how many different businesses, but the question was, over the past 5 years, how many technology projects have gone in on time or sooner, on or below budget, on or at business requirements or exceeding, and without disrupting the user audience. And guess what? Big fat zero across the board. Everyone. It was shocking. The whole year, everyone, big zero. And so what I'm saying is that if we don't get our hands around this organizationally, then we're going to continue to have a big fat zero in the ROI space. And just because we're ushering in cool new technologies doesn't mean that value and ROI are going to automatically happen, because that hasn't happened in the past. So if I take a macro view, cool tools have been coming in, and we haven't seen the ROI narrative shift to the green or to the positive. So what makes this new era of cool tools any different? And I guess that is really going to take us to the next point that we're going to be talking about. So, those of you that know me, and I know I've got some people on this call that I know. Hi, Dina. Hi, Carla. Hi, Unmi. I see some of my people that I know and trust, and they're probably shaking their head. Donna, they're probably shaking their head because they all know that this is true. So it'll take us into the conversation with the super users and organizationally how we take charge of that. So close my point out one, and I'm going to pick that mic back up.
Great.
Thanks, Ginger. Yeah, thanks. Great comments. And moving into that last question, and I'm looking at the time, this may be our last question. I'd like to do a couple things. Since we've heard the perspective of the finance role changing and having more time to do analytics and provide these business insights and to interpret these insights, which is huge. I mean, we all get insights in our organization that we have no clue what it says. And to have the machines crunch the data, but then the people and the judgment and the wisdom and the business experience interpret the insights is very, very fascinating, and it becomes a more business enterprise kind of role for finance and accounting. And certainly as it relates to Ginger's points around super users and how, so the next question is, how do finance and accounting professionals become more of a super user around technology, not necessarily just ERP, but around technology where they can become agents of change across the enterprise to help their colleagues in sales and marketing understand the insights and business insights, and to help their colleagues in production. So that's one part of the question. And then with the time crunch here, I'd like to just add, if Mozam and Ginger would also conclude their answer with what are the one or two takeaways or the one or two recommendations that you would provide to finance and accounting professionals and finance and accounting organizations to make this shift, this work shift, this change in business processes with all this technology? What would be one or two takeaways that you could provide? So go ahead, take it away.
Great question, Marilyn. Thanks a lot for that. I think the key word here is collaboration. For as far as the leadership role of finance among different super users of cross-functional areas is concerned. I think the key here is collaboration. Collaboration is obviously the working together of individuals towards a common goal. Yeah. And I see collaboration as a competitive advantage in the 21st century. Finance function is important and unique in that most of the business activities and projects touch this function in some way, and therefore it has an outstanding opportunity to take a key leadership role in developing what we call collaboration. In my own little experience of managing and delivering digital transformation projects in the past, in complex business entities operating in multiple geographical locations, finance played a significant role in supporting the super user community from cross-functional areas in terms of making sure that internal controls are in place in their respective system design documents, and newly designed system complies in all aspects of financial and operating reporting requirements of the business, and their job was basically to connect connect all the dots together for different areas of the business. Now, what I do, my typical approach in a digital transformation project, including the SAP implementation, is that I try and deploy a relevant accounting specialist as a support mechanism with each functional area core user of the business. For example, the cost accountant who understands the inventories and the costing of that, the production processes and everything else. I would actually deploy that cost accountant with that skill set as a support person with a super user of warehousing of the inventory and production planning. Whereas I would deploy an AP, an accounts payable accountant, to work alongside the super user of procurement area, and the AR accountant to work with the super user of sales, just to shadow them and to help them in their day-to-day activities, and also to see how the system in different areas integrate together. Now, as far as the failure of digital transformation projects are concerned, what I have seen in the past is that failure doesn't only happen because of the system that is being implemented was bad. I mean, all of these systems, they are great systems. They have been tried and tested all over the world, and it's not and the system itself is not the prime reason for the project failure. But the prime reason for the project failure, design integration of different functional modules within these systems, and the mismanagement of the most critical project resource, which we call super user. Yeah, so
Oh my gosh.
that's where that's and I know I'm going to trigger I'm going to trigger a debate with Ginger now, because she's the specialist of this area. So I would just leave it for Ginger to continue this discussion.
Oh my gosh, Mozam, I'm going to reach through the phone and give you a big hug on that one.
I knew that you would like.
Yeah, you knew that.
Yeah.
But for me, it's so exciting because here we have an award-winning CFO on the phone, and he's clearly pointing at this huge value. And so we're seeing an uptick in executives that are curious about this topic and understanding this, and this is really, really important. So I would say from a finance standpoint, finance suffers a lot when there is not a healthy training and support system for end users, super users. And so I believe that finance is perfectly positioned to move on this challenge that we have in this question. And fortunately, of course, through the SunSource community, there are resources that are coming in now to help structure this for success and connect companies to each other, having the dialogue about how different ones are solving it. I mean, we can take Schlumberger as an example in Houston. They've got 2,000 super users in their super user network. You can't tell me that that their executives don't think this is important, because they have 2,000 troops on the ground. I mean, this is pretty amazing. And so it's really growing, and this is good news for everyone. But this is typically a project thing or a grassroots effort, engaging the super users in this. But there's where the problem is. We get them in the project, and when the project ends, it is very predictable what will happen to them. And there are two words for why it falls apart after a project ends, that being a super user network or a super user team. It falls apart because it loses budget and it loses leadership, and it will not miraculously hold itself up. It will decompose, and it's very, very predictable. And when it falls apart after the project, the business users are dealt a really super bad hand that sounds something like this: just figure it out and it'll be fine. But what we're not doing is we're not calculating the cost of what's happened here. And so that can happen with any technologies that are coming down. And so I think that, ask yourself this question: would we ever put the keys of a high performance car like a finance professional's, would we ever put the keys of that high performance car in the hands of a brand new driver, or someone that hasn't taken driver's ed, or someone just that went through driver's ed all by themselves? We would never do that. I mean, that's like finance professionals being exposed to the enterprise value, and we want them to advocate for a more strategic approach. But how can we do that when we're saying just figure it out? And so I think it's really important, and I guess the theme that I've had through this whole fireside chat is that technology is not going to save us. It never has. I was in the early days of the ERPs coming in Y2K, and the big promise of replacing all these legacy systems with one system, and it was going to be this one connected system. And oh my gosh, the dream and the excitement. Well, it fell apart. And, like Mozam said, it falls apart not because the technology is not good enough to do the job. The technology, I mean, there's really strong technology out there, and this technology that's coming in now will get stronger and stronger. But if we're out there trying to, we're trying to save a patient, but the patient's bleeding out, and we don't take any measures to stop the bleeding, this is the situation that we have. So I say that, Marilyn, you asked for 2 takeaways, and I'm going to give a couple of takeaways, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. My takeaways for you: number one, you need to have a conversation. If you don't have a super user network in place, for me, you've got to have, and if it's not a super user network, you still have to have this entity in place, this organizational entity that you haven't had before. Again, I've been saying you've got to shift the way your organizational structures work, because they're not working for the new technologies that are coming in. So you've got to have, number one, here's number one takeaway: you need an informed, educated, empowered, cross-functional network of people that aligns and binds the historical siloed business, including, that's what a super user network is all about, and that's why we call it a network. It is a network across your entire business, across the whole business process landscape. So starting those conversations, everyone on the phone can start those conversations within your department. You can have a conversation about that. All right, takeaway number 2, I would say go back into your departments and start a recurring discussion in your business area on the new technologies. You all have department meetings, I'm sure of that. And so maybe take a department meeting once a month where you take 15 minutes, or maybe do some lunch and learns, or, whatever the case may be. Start a recurring discussion. Put it on the calendar. We are going to talk about what are these new technologies that are going to be coming in, and get a recurring conversation started around this. Because again, I want you informed, I want you educated, I want you empowered to be able to take some charge around the change that's coming in. Because if you don't, there's a lot of fear about some of the stuff that's coming on. And again, to my point earlier, the best medicine for fear is education and information. So those are my 2 takeaway points. Marilyn, back to you.
Well,
Great
thanks,
comments.
Jinder. Yeah, absolutely. Mozam, do you have any 1 or 2 takeaways to add?
I mean, I can just touch upon, the second part of your question, which was about the changes in the design of the finance function. I think traditional view of the finance function was that it was a bottom heavy and a top light function in terms of the number of people or the population of the people. And on the flip side, it was top heavy and bottom light in terms of their month-end pay packets, the salaries that they were getting. So I think in the digital age, that's going to completely change. So you will see collaboration of specialists like data scientists, working alongside finance professionals and synthesizing information, providing new technologies and new tools in order to decide to basically design the relevant financial and non-financial information. So it's going to be a collaboration of individuals who are multifaceted and with different skill sets working alongside finance.
Totally agree with that.
Very good. Well, thank you, both Mazam and Ginger, for your insights and your thought leadership. Just as some closing remarks here before we turn it over to Q&A, Gateway Architects is so proud to be a part of this webinar and this new wave of innovation technology solutions that's coming in. And we offer Meister Smart Reporting and Analytics, which is part of the Meister Smart Business Applications that hooks directly into the SAP backend so that you can get your data fast. And by this we mean users can access their data up to 85% faster. So how does this work for financial reporting as an example? And there's a few use cases where Meister Smart Reporting and Analytics would bring high value to the finance and accounting organizations. The first use case or scenario may be in an organization where this organization may have most of the financial reporting reports created and generated, and they're being generated in some standard way, and you've been running these reports in batch mode in the evening, as an example, to have your new reports in the morning. Well, with Meister, imagine getting those reports 85% faster than you can get today. So if it takes 10 hours to run your FICO reports today, with Meister, it'll take around 1.5 hours. And if it takes 8 hours with Meister, it will take a little over an hour. So imagine, also the capability of scheduling your report creation from your mobile device. So you as a user may be at home in the evening and you can schedule from your mobile device to automatically schedule your report creation from your mobile device so that your reports are ready when you walk into the office in the morning. A second scenario may be where is with an organization that uses a combination of the SAP standard reports and customized reports for financial reporting, and you may create new reports frequently. So imagine the improved speed of performance, as I mentioned above, but add these following capabilities. You have the capability to access all of your financial reports, both the standard SAP and customized reports, directly from Excel. So these reports contain both the data and its metadata, which means that these reports are intelligent and they come into Excel in the right columns and the right tabs so that your reports are easy to understand. So there's no more HTML formats and there's no more needing help from ABAP resources to create these new reports. So just to summarize, Meister Smart Reporting and Analytics brings to finance and accounting speed of data access, automatic scheduling of reports from your mobile device, directly accessing standard and customized SAP from reports from Excel, and it brings intelligent data with metadata, so there's no more workarounds because you can't manipulate this data because of its format. So imagine the impact: improved operational efficiency with automated processes, the reduction of ABAP resource costs, improved efficiency. So please take a look at Meister Smart Business Applications at www.meisterapplications.com, or please feel free to send an email to sales@meisterapplications.com to schedule a demo and get more information. So turning this back over to Ashley to open up for Q&A. Thank you very much.
Okay, I did not see any questions come through the chat. I am unmuting everybody right now, so if you have any questions, you can go ahead right now and speak up and get your questions answered.
We've left you all dumbfounded. or your brains are on fire.
Now, I do have one question, and it's Mozam, as you've looked at the new technologies coming in, and we've talked about people in the kind of the fear factor of the new technologies and artificial intelligence and those types of things.
Yep.
How have you dealt with, because it's really a culture shift. It's not a danger to your job. I look at it as an opportunity for folks to learn how to do new things or give them time to add to their responsibilities and things. But how have you seen the cultural shifts handled in those environments?
I think it's an absolutely fantastic question, and I've actually dealt with it in the past. And I mean, what I've seen is that whenever you are talking about any digital transformation, introducing a new automation tool in the business, especially in the in finance function, you see people just scrambling around and they don't want to be part of the project, and they start looking for jobs, because they think that this new technology and this new tool is going to steal away their job. So the way I typically try and handle this type of situation, which is a change management situation, is I go to the relevant people. Let's say, for example, if I am automating the accounts payable function, and the accounts payable accountant who's responsible to do certain processes which are manual in nature, and they know that now it's going to be replaced by an automation tool, and as a result of that automation, they have fear of losing their job. I tell them that, look, what do you think is the most boring part of their work, in a day? And they say that, look, we feel bored because we have to pick up documents from different systems together, do the matching, and then make an entry into the system. And I said, okay, if this you find this as a boring job because it's monotonous, but you still don't want to lose your job, you want to stay in the job, let me try and help you in getting into a more value creating activity rather than just doing something which is purely manual and mechanical. So I try and encourage those people who are potentially affected by these type of automation initiatives, is to move them into roles which are more value creating, more interactive with different business unit leaders from cross-functional areas, and try and make their job more interesting by letting them sit behind the screen less and more interactive. So I think it's just try and find out exactly what these people who are target of whose jobs are actually at risk after automation, to find out exactly what they feel not so interesting in their day-to-day activities, and try and make it more interesting. It helps them in their careers, it helps them in their motivation, and it just keeps them going. And also, I think the second important thing is to make them part of the project also. So instead of completely alienating them, I try and tell them that, look, I want you to be part of the project, and you steer and you drive and you control all the important activities as part of this automation project, because you're the specialist in this area. So that also helps in motivating them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I know we're at 5 and we'll close out. And I think that points to this takeaway number 2 I had. Start a recurring discussion in your business area. This is a great thing to do to start those conversations, because it's a journey and not a one-time event. So Marilyn, I'll turn it back to you.
That's absolutely right.
All right. Well, Mozam Shah, Ginger Luttrell, thank you so much for all of your insights and thought leadership on this topic. We unpacked a lot this hour, and I thank you so much for joining us And hopefully we'll see you soon, either in Australia or here in Dallas, Mozam. And it was a pleasure, the pleasure
That would be
talking to
great.
all of you.
Thanks, Marilyn
thank
and
Yeah,
Ginger,
thank you
for
so much.
having me on the webinar.
Yeah, it was really
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Go
Thanks,
be
everyone.
super.